and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I will be your host for this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, or whenever you happen to be listening, because after all, it is your podcast. Now, joining me today, well, it's what you would call a quick start on the Kickstart episode, and a quick start on the Kickstart episode is when we get somebody who's in the middle of their Kickstarter campaign to have a little chat about themselves before usually the campaign's about to finish. So joining me today is I've got Brett Sobol from Nauvoo Games, and Nauvoo Games has got a Kickstarter at the moment. It's got a Kickstarter that's doing reasonably well, I would say. So hello Brett, thank you for coming on.
Hey Richard, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about the Reckoners.
Yeah, let's get into that. But before we get into that, we better let people know out there that the reason that we do this is because we pretty much believe that there's not enough podcasts out there about board games. There's only us, there's the guys at Unlucky Frog, and there's a couple other Scottish people. There's the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token as well. But apart from that, no other podcasts out there about board games. Searched far and wide, not being able to find any. And the other reason that we do this is because Brett sent us an email and said he'd like to have a chat. And I am not about to turn down somebody who is releasing the Reckoners game out there, am I? Because otherwise I'd get in a lot of trouble if I'd let down a lot of people, and there'd be a lot of people that are angry and says, "You're going to speak to Brett about the Reckoners and you turned it down?" Yeah, I did. So that would be the end of the podcast. So we had to get you on, basically, Brett. We had no choice. So,
well, I'm delighted to hear that all of those people have been threatening you with the very existence of your show enough to make me come on here. So thank you all, listeners. Continue to send your threatening emails to Richard, and I will appear on here more often.
That's not what I was aiming for, but I guess it'll kind of do. What we always like to do is we like to find a little bit of history about our guests. So we want to kind of dive into the kind of the prologue of the past before we stare at the current comic series of the present, before shooting off into the next issue of the future. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into the hobby yourself, Brett, to begin with?
Sure. I guess the origins of me playing board games go way back to like chess and Stratego as a kid. And I would just say it didn't, progress much further than that for a long time, just kind of playing cards with the family and the traditional games that you'd play growing up, or at least I played growing up, which would be, Monopoly, Connect Four, Sorry, those kind of classic games. But it wasn't long until I met Seth, who is my partner in Nauvoo Games and co-designer on all of our different games so far. Mm-hmm. And the two of us started playing more games together, and that's really a result of Seth and his family and sort of having we'll just call a big family that played games together all the time. So I think it was at Seth's house that I probably played my first game of Ticket to Ride, and subsequently other games like Settlers of Catan or Catan, and then I don't even get into the debates there, but we'll skip that. Then Carcassonne and a few other of the more kind of quintessential gateway games. And through university, I played other games like Puerto Rico and continued to expand into the hobby. Uh-huh. But it wasn't until a few years after school, so about almost 4 years ago now, that Seth and I really got serious about pursuing this more as a business.
What did you
less of just a hobby?
What did you major in when you were at?
I actually majored in business. Oh. And my school specifically focused on entrepreneurship. So I had a lot of the, educational background to start a business and analyze an industry and that kind of thing. So it was part of the reason I think that Seth approached me after, so many years of being apart at university that we decided to get into this. And, to kind of wrap up the genesis of this, it was, he reached out to me with this idea for a game. And, we had sort of played around with the idea of making up our own games as kids, but it was never a serious endeavor. And it wasn't until he brought up the idea of potentially running a Kickstarter to make a game of our own design that things got interesting. And 3 years ago, we created Stockpile, which was our first game. I don't know if you've heard of it or played it, Richard, but it was that was our first. And we've designed a few others since then, but we're excited to be working on our first game based on an IP this year, which is called The Reckoners. And I guess that's sort of a short cap to it, but I'll just open it up for questions for you if there's anything more you want elaboration on, because I feel like I could go on forever just talking about boring.
I just like listening to people kind of going, because when you study business, do they sit down and say, do they have kind of like career planning? Do they sit you down and say, okay, what is it you'd like to do? Did you have an idea at the time? Were you just thinking about, well, I want to use my degree or my qualification to go out and get myself a business up and running? So by that time, were you fairly involved in kind of like the board game scene, that it seemed like a natural progression to try and put something together?
Good question. So I would jokingly say that they sat us down and said, these are the industries that make money and these are those that don't. So I said, where is that industry that doesn't make money? I'm going to go there. And and no, that's not how it happened.
Your hand and say, I'd like to be perpetually poor, please.
Exactly. No, that's not how it worked. But I actually had no intention of going into board games whatsoever. It was something that I enjoyed, and I never thought of it as more than really a hobby. Now, I did, at the time play more video games and was pursuing a lot of, academic type of work there. And there was a lot going on, at least at the time that I was at university, with the development of the iPhone and the birth of mobile and social casual games. Yeah. So it was a very interesting case study to just keep apprised on, at least for me. So I suppose it doesn't come as too much of a shock that I moved into the analog space, just kind of having a general understanding of game design, just general game industry knowledge and how things worked. But I had no formal work experience there. In fact, my day job, which I still maintain, has nothing to do with games.
All right.
Yet I do this on the side, part-time, and Seth and I plan to continue to do it that way. But we
Are you currently sure?
Enjoyed
are
ourselves.
You sure about that, considering where the Reckoners is currently sitting?
No, I'm very positive about that. I mean, the nice thing is, I look at the Reckoners and say, wow, the community values the efforts that we put in, and we're very satisfied with the feedback we get from our designs and our fans, and we continue to want to curate that and build on that. But right now, at least the outlook for jumping full-time into this is just not exactly what we want to do with our lives, but we enjoy it a lot and want to continue doing it part-time. We attend 1, 2, maybe 3 conventions or so a year that in an official capacity, and design 1, maybe 2 games a year. And if we can just create 1 or 2 great games a year, then that to us is super satisfying. So
cool. So you go down the first line of Stockpile, which seems to be business related. So was the idea, it's kind of like, I went to business school, I got my business shoes on, I got my business pad, I decided to design a business game. So was that the way it kind of went? Did you stay within territory you were kind of familiar with and try and kind of gamify it? even though I'm aware that gamifying something is actually a thing that you do in an industry and business. But did you take kind of like ideas and practices and practical theories that you'd learned and said, actually, we can maybe turn this into some kind of game ourselves?
Yeah, no, it's true. I think people draw inspiration from what's around them and what's recent, what they've read or seen recently, and just kind of put it all together. And for me, just recently coming out of business school with a background in finance as well, and having worked in some sort of like high finance and financial services type of roles, I had some things on my mind. And when Seth and I were developing these mechanics of Stockpile, we had sort of a question, right? That our game designs usually begin with a question of, and the question's often centered around an emotion too, or an experience. And in Stockpile, the case was, what do we want? Like, what would it be like to bid on piles of things that you don't know everything about, but some things about, right? Like, just what would that be like? What would it feel like? What we found is that, a ton of people enjoyed that type of experience just as an abstract concept. Like, I know something you don't, I'm going to get it. Theoretically, I'll get it at a better price because of my knowledge. But then we started adding other elements into it, like, oh, there's like these cards that can poison a pile type of a thing. And then, we had this fun little mechanism set up, but we didn't know how to theme it or what it made sense for. And for some, odd reason, perhaps due to my educational background, my mind went to buying into portfolios of stocks or indexes of stocks. Investors oftentimes don't have full information as to what's in there, yet they trust that, the market as a whole overall goes up, and they'll invest into it, especially when given, we'll call it like fair market value for the prices that they're investing.
Yeah.
So that sort of became the seedling of Stockpile, the stock market game of insider trading, for those that don't know what we're talking about and want to look it up.
So was it quite easy to develop from there once you had the core idea? I mean, was it quite easy? Did you develop it with Seth as well then? Was this the first game you developed with him? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, once we had that seedling, that was it. It instantly clicked. It was, this makes total sense. Then let's give everybody insider information about these, different stocks, and then we'll put shares in here, face up and face down. We'll put trading fees in here. We'll give some people action cards, and we'll make them fun, famous investors with special player powers just to spice it up, and we can do some advanced things with the board. And all this kind of started to snowball with cool ideas, and then that was our first game.
Did you include really nice business cards that people could have?
a good idea, but remember, my background was finance, not marketing, so no.
You're telling me you didn't? You've not seen that American Psycho scene when he does the business card thing?
No, I have not.
You're missing a trick now. No, you have to have really, really nice. You've probably got really nice business cards now for the company anyway. So
yeah, they're okay. They're nothing luxurious, but they do the job. Remember what I said in the beginning about the industries you want to go into and the ones you don't?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose you need to tone down your business card based on the industries that you're going to be going into. But
yeah, that's right.
Stockpile did well. Well, I mean, if you funded, you delivered. Everybody kind of got their copy, and it was you got shy of almost 700 backers for the first project, and you raised hitting kind of sub $30,000 for your first Kickstarter campaign's is no mean feat, because nowadays I see a lot of people almost like cutting down their targets for their first campaign, kind of based on the competition that was kind of out there. Then you decided to expand on Stockpile after that, yeah? So, I mean, why continue on the theme as opposed to doing a new IP completely altogether?
a combination of two things. The first is expanding on an existing game is extremely easier than designing a whole new game.
Yeah.
In addition, we had received so much positive praise and feedback for Stockpile, and we knew that the game really just didn't have its full legs under it yet. And to be honest, I don't even think it still does. It's one of those games that, though it, on BGG will sit inside the top 300 and has been recognized on various top 10 lists, etc. Mm-hmm. It's something that still, in my opinion, compared to some other games in the industry that it came out with, flies under the radar. And to that end, we designed an expansion both as a ploy to get the marketing buzz out there and give opportunity for people to buy it, as well as to insert, some other cool design elements into the game that we had been thinking about, such as the forecast dice and commodities and taxes and some other things.
Yeah.
However, there was also a practical aspect too, beyond just, let's promote our own game and do something different with it. The practical side of it was, based on our first Kickstarter, we only printed, I think we printed 2,000 copies with our first print run. And it wasn't long before I think we sold out of that inside of a few months. Like, we debuted Stockpile at Origins, I remember, which was I think in June, in June of that year. And keep in mind, this is several years ago too. So Kickstarter has changed and the industry has grown even more so. But we printed 2,000 units. We debuted it at Origins. We sold out at Origins, and then we continued to get a ton of buzz over the summer with Dice Tower reviews, etc., and sold a lot online into people like Miniature Market, etc. And then a few months later, we sold out at Gen Con, like several hundred copies worth, and we were basically out of inventory. So it came to a point where it was like, well, there's a lot of demand for this game, and we should supply that demand. So let's do another print run, and so we combined it with the expansion.
Yeah, I mean, if you hadn't done the expansion for Continuing Corruption, would you have still been able to do a reprint, or was the Kickstarter kind of essential to help you do the reprints for the original game?
We probably would have been able to do a reprint, but because of the Kickstarter, we were able to accelerate the amount of, games that we reprinted. So I think our second reprint was closer to like 7,500 copies for Stockpile versus, 2,000 or whatever that we did the first time. And that helped us tremendously because, we were able to then work with distribution and develop relationships with some of the bigger suppliers in the world on the hobby board game side, and land those accounts, show them that we had demand for our product. And though our line was small at the time, we were committed to growing it and had this great title that they could get access to, for the foreseeable future. So get in your orders now, blah, blah, blah. And the funny thing is, like, even though we did that, we sold out of that run and the expansion run within like 3 months. So it just like flew out of the warehouse. And that was a wonderful thing. It was super rewarding and validating. And, part of that was due to almost 2,000 backers, I think, for the expansions Kickstarter.
Yeah, I mean, this one, you went well above $80,000 for that one. So the jump from one project to another was almost you kind of tripled what you kind of brought in. But as you said, do you kind of look back and say, it'd be nice if we'd printed more copies, or it was like, well, it put us in a good place? Because as you said, you had the relationship with the distribution channels. So was that important? Was it kind of important to forge those distribution channels so you had a tail on the game kind of going forward, that you had a way of potentially being able to put more games out there, but at the same time maybe kind of, I guess, justify doing another print run off your own back because people would be willing to kind of buy the game from you?
Yeah, I mean, so landing the distribution accounts was certainly helpful. It's one of those things where that you're kind of establishing to some extent minimum volumes.
Yeah.
However, there are plenty of companies today, and I think it's becoming increasingly popular for companies today to eschew the traditional, distribution model of selling it and just go direct to consumers and use Kickstarter as a vehicle to do that, or their own website or so forth. And that is an option. So I don't want to, I wouldn't advise other publishers, if there are those listening to this, or other designers, would-be publishers, to just focus on distribution. I think that would be too narrow-minded. There's a solution that fits for everyone's business and what their goals are. For us, because we do this part-time, I didn't want to try to spend a lot of effort building a direct sales platform and marketing that and getting people to come to my website to buy my game. I would rather leverage existing relationships, piggyback off of the brick and mortar network that exists today, and support the local game stores in a way with all of our different products. And I think that has helped us to grow quickly. I don't know if, looking back, if I would have done things differently, if it would have led to the same place or not, but I would say it has been helpful for us. I think it was the right move, and it was surprisingly a lot easier than I thought it would be, based on a lot of the research I had done. But when you, I think, present yourself professionally, have a good product, and how this industry works, then people want to work with you. So all factors that contributed to our success, I think.
Mm-hmm. And then you stepped into party games. So you moved from business. Honey, I've had a really tough week at work. That's okay. We're going to go to Johnson's at the weekend. What are we going to do? We're going to play crosstalk. So you went from your 9 to 5 without Dolly Parton to doing a kind of a party game. So I mean, what where did that come from? Was that a game? Was that already an idea that kind of existed, that was the natural step, or was that something you went, hey, here's another idea, and you just kind of decided to put it together?
It was the latter. It was a spur of the moment inspiration that came from, I think I was playing some other party game, and I don't remember what it was. I was extremely bored, and I thought, this is not how I want to be playing a party game. I found myself really just not thinking about what the other team was doing on their turns, not engaged. And I thought, this is just really dumb. Like, what if when the other team was acting, like, they were giving me clues so that I should pay attention to them?
Yeah.
And then we kind of had this interesting epiphany of, like, wait, what if the other team is giving a clue to their team, but I'm the one that's acting on it first, and it is relevant to me? And so it kind of became this, again, question, right? Like, what if that was happening? Like, how would that change the gameplay of both the clue givers and all the other players involved? And how would you build a set of rules around that? And from there, Crosstalk was born.
But it seems to be a bit of a departure from what you've done before.
An extreme departure. I would say that we, as Nauvoo Games, and I don't want to speak for Seth, but I would say that, our approach to just designing games and in the industry is finding things that, we enjoy playing, and then adding our own spin onto them, or, kind of just approaching the industry from a wide lens and saying, like, we're just going to make good games. It doesn't have to be the same game as the last one, or even the same type of game. Whatever it is that we're doing, we're going to do it thoughtfully, and we're going to, be inspired by something, and that what you're playing is going to be, I guess, tastefully done in some way. And that to us is really what makes a game designer good, is versatility, an ability to kind of come into an interesting problem or question and design a solution around it that people want to play with. And that that is something that I guess we've been continuing trying to do, is sort of push our own boundaries, become more versatile, play different types of games, and design and redesign types of, different games. And I'm sure we'll, continue to dabble in different stuff from here on out. But we've at least explored a party genre, a stock market type of economic game, and now we're at the Reckoners, which is entirely different from the other two.
Is it? I mean, Crosstalk did $30,000. I've never seen a party game do massively, massively well on Kickstarter. Do you think that's maybe the type of people that are looking at it, or?
Well, sure. I'm gonna guess you're leaving out the exception of Exploding Kittens and so forth.
Yeah.
So there are games that have done that, right? But you're right. The norm is that party games on Kickstarter, generally speaking, don't do well. Period. The reason is, I think the type of audience on Kickstarter is not necessarily looking for party game type experiences.
No.
It also comes across in some ways, I think, as a little gimmicky on Kickstarter, more so than, much more so than I think some of the other typical games you see on there. It's something that's meant for convention type play, right? Yeah. And in group based play, and to get that, it's hard to sell that in an environment that is just purely digital and you can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't kind of interact with it. That's why selling these type of party games at conventions is so successful. And I think for us, if I were to connect the dots between the two, like while the genres are very different, one of the things that I think you'll see between both the two our first two games, Crosstalk and Stockpile, are levels of information dynamics that we were playing with. I would say if there is a consistency between them, it's that, right? Like we really toyed with the idea of information as a variable, and I think you can sort of see the way in which we did it similarly between them, with mixing private and public knowledge to different variations there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But then you're not taking another departure again completely with the Reckoners, which some could have seen as a bit of a risk. And I mean, I know it's a known IP, but I mean, how with your previous track record, how do you rock up and say, right, we're going to produce a game based around the Reckoners? What do you think, guys? Here's our party game and here's our business game. Are you saying yes yet?
Correct. I think we had challenges there, right? In fact, there's a comment that sort of stuck with me, which is for whatever, some fans' comment that stuck with me, and it was something along the lines of like, they designed Stockpile, was a hit, Crosstalk, for me wasn't as fun, bit of a flop. Now they're designing the Reckoners, and I think they're just trying to find their style, or find their fit, and only to find, my guess is that it was their very first game, and they'll have to design something back, akin to that to be successful again. And to me, while I understand where he's coming from with that comment, he or she, I guess, is coming from with that comment. My thought is, look, we design based on inspiration, and if it's a party game that comes from that inspiration, then great. If it is a cooperative game based on a book series that we really enjoyed and an author that we really adore, then that's awesome. Like, for us, it's what I'm going to spend my time on as a designer and as a developer. And I know ultimately that while a few people may play this game more than, 5-10 times, I'm the one that's going to play it 1,000 times, and I'm going to have to explain it thousands more. And if I'm going to do that and put the sheer amount of hours and volume of work into this that I'm going to, it should be on something that I want to design and I want to create and that I like. And as selfish as that sounds, it's in many ways the reality of this whole creation process and being a publisher and designer, right? Like, there's lots of good things that come with being a publisher.
Yeah.
There's also lots of, frustrating things, but this is, in my mind, one of the good ones is a control over what we want to make.
Yeah, and I think there has to be some passion behind it, because I think you can tell games where they have landed the IP and maybe the understanding of what that IP means to other people hasn't quite hit well enough that they've been able to put that together effectively in a game.
It's an insightful point. I think you're right. There's something to be said for, I watched, I don't know, The Terminator once or Jurassic Park a couple of times, like super cool. Lots of gamers like it. Market research says it would be a good one, like let's make a game. But it's another to be like, this book series is incredible. It has to be a game. I'm going to make it a game, not just for myself and because I like it, but because it deserves to be one. Fans would love it. Like, let's make a game that's going to bring it to life for everyone and kind of almost bring your best friends, or best, like, favorite characters from this book series to life, like with tenderness and care, right, and attention. Yeah. And I think you're right. Like I think that's a great point.
Yeah, the best will in the world. I could never ever create this game because I have not read the books. I'm aware of them, but I haven't read the books. So I would be the type of guy who would, know that I should do something with, for instance, with Steelheart and make sure it's important. But I'd probably make an actual mess of the nuance and how to represent the different characters and represent them so they're recognisable to the people who are big fans of the IP. And I think that's kind of really important. I mean, it's it's fairly obvious you guys have attacked this project with a lot of gusto. Just when you see the components, the design of the game. I mean, I'm looking at the stuff that you did for Stockpile, and the design difference between what you did with Stockpile and just what you've done in the Reckoners is a huge difference. I mean, did this really turn into a huge passion project for you? Because I mean, the number of components that you seem to have, everything from the kind of the art direction that you've gone with, the color scheme, everything like that seems to be, I suppose, to be corny, epic.
I would say yes. I mean, look, we've yes that we have gone probably down a rabbit hole, very deep down a rabbit hole when it comes to, just putting in passion and resources into creating this game above and beyond probably what was economically viable to do so. But, like, caution to the wind, we really went for this game because, like you said, we love it. It's passion. And we want this game to be all it can be. And for us, that meant, a cohesiveness of art and components, even if it meant paying extra for things that needed to be done just because they needed to be done, right? And it kind of all just came together, like one thing after another as part of the creation process sort of went hand in hand with how the materials would take form. And we've been very fortunate to work with a creative team like Ian O'Toole, Miguel Coimbra, and Noah Adelman from Game Trays that have been able to kind of keep up with that vision and change our components and different things as we've sort of explored different manifestations of them in tangible form.
Did you get to speak to Brandon?
Directly, I did not. Seth spoke with him briefly, but Brandon is a guy whose time is quite precious, and I have worked very closely with his team and spoken with his his teammates multiple times, and even played the game with them, but Brandon, in a direct interaction, no, I have not had the fortune yet.
Are you still pinching yourself a bit that you've got the IP though? Do you kind of like go, okay, I'm just going over to update my Kickstarter all about the Reckoners again. Life is good. I mean, did you really think you'd be doing this kind of, a couple of years ago when you were bringing kind of stockpile to the table?
No. It's a very humbling moment, I think, when you put a lot of time and effort into creating something, and you throw it up on Kickstarter, and as much as you've done work, I feel like there's this moment of vulnerability when you go like, what if nobody buys this? Like, what happens? Like, how do I live with myself and all the time that I just spent to do this, and how do I make it, how do I think about it differently and make it work? And for us, I would say that, yeah, like we have, how do I want to phrase this? I would just say that, look, while we have those moments now of vulnerability and just sort of this like, oh God, like what if nobody funds it? I think confidently, we have started turning the boat and saying like, we know what we're doing. Wait, do we? But like, no, we know what we're doing. And like, kind of put our best foot forward, throw the project up there, and have built a crowd and community around it, and really do our best to bring the product to life. And for us, I think it started to turn a corner in many ways with this project, yet and some others, where I think we're evolving as designers, we're evolving as as people doing this in business, just learning and taking those learnings with us from project to project, and hopefully we'll continue to create more exciting and great games.
What was it like in the first couple of days of the campaign when you were used to kind of like a steady funding level or pledge level being reached for it to... Because it did well. I mean, it funded really quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, I think the Reckoners funded in something like 24 hours, but yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time. It's a rush those first few days. It's there's a lot to try to keep up with, and honestly, that's a good problem, right? Like that's something that you want to have happen.
Yeah.
And
were you a little bit like, oh my goodness, this is actually doing something, or this is gonna do something?
I mean,
kind of.
You definitely, like you said, you have to pinch yourself. I mean, it's a humbling moment, I think, when you put a project up there and you watch, the reaction to it. People get excited about it. I mean, even just in the preliminary, press releases that we were able to coordinate with Brandon's team, seeing, the buzz kind of come together is validating. And as the game took shape and was played with other people, receiving all the positive feedback along the way, especially from more mainstream reviewers and playtesters and the like, it helps give confidence that the game will be well received and people will like it. So it's just an awesome experience all around.
Was it easier for you to get kind of people to look at the game based on the IP than you'd found with like the previous games you'd produced, even with the kind of the good vibes that surrounded Stockpile? Did you find that just by saying we're making the Reckoners game, that maybe opened a lot more doors, or you had a lot more general interest in people getting their eyes on a review copy of the game, for instance?
Yeah, it's a conversation starter for sure. I mean, one of the if you were to just take the two side by side and go, would you like to play would you like to play the Reckoners? It's based on the books by Brandon Sanderson, right? People who know the books would be like, oh wow, I didn't know there was a game. Like I love those books. Let's play it, right? Or it's just easier versus, would you guys like to play a game about insider trading in the stock market? It's an economic game with, for 2 to 5 people with all kinds of cool information dynamics and some auction and bidding stuff. And people were like, stock market? You know, like, it's not exactly the easiest sell, but
Yeah.
again, like, it has a target market. If people like that kind of thing, then they'll say, oh yeah, like, I love stock market games or economic games. That sounds cool. But I would just say the market, generally speaking, for a book series that's sold over 2 million copies worldwide is going to be much bigger than, you know, somebody who might happen to like stock games who also is a board gamer, or like, it's just an easier, you're breaking down the barriers for somebody to say, you know, like, let's play something else.
For people that are wondering what The Reckoners is about, they're looking at the campaign and are wanting a kind of the quick, I guess, elevator pitch, to use a business term, because I've got full of business terms. What would you say to people it's about? How would they play it? What's the kind of the main mechanics behind it?
I'd say that The Reckoners is a game similar to Pandemic and King of Tokyo. It is a cooperative game for 1 to 6 players that plays in about an hour and a half, or maybe a little less. And in the game, you'll take on the roles of the main protagonist in the book series by Brandon Sanderson. But if you're not familiar with the book series, essentially you are a group of operatives known as the Reckoners, and your job is to take down a big bad villain known as Steelheart. Steelheart has superpowers, and he and his fellow epics, as they're called, are basically eliminating the population in the city, and it is your job to stop them from doing that while finding his weakness and assassinating him. You'll use dice, manipulate dice, build an engine in the game of different actions that you're going to take, and ultimately work together simultaneously in many parts of the games to do that. And I would leave it at that. So if you're interested in The Reckoners, you should check it out on our website or on Kickstarter right now.
Have you ever put on a cape like Steelheart?
Have I ever put on a cape? No. I have not.
That's lies, Brett. You know you have.
No.
You have?
No, I've never put on a cape.
Not even once.
Now that you're asking for it, I think I might have to.
I think the thank you video has to be you dressed like Steelheart saying thank you everybody for backing.
I could totally do that. You could
totally do that. And you could get, I don't know if you have long flowing hair.
No.
I mean,
I could totally do that.
You could totally do that. You have to totally do that. And you have to kind of like get 2 of those glowing LED balls that you get and put them in each of your hands and just stand there and go, thank you for backing. And then that's all you need to say. And then get Seth standing at the side with like a wind machine or a fan, or just with a piece of paper wafting it back and forth so you get the wind going through your hair.
Your rewards may or may not have been destroyed during the making of this video.
Exactly. I've taken your pledge money because after all, I am bad. Just go,
exactly.
Ta-da!
That's it.
Just
cut scene.
Fly off.
Yeah,
and
fly
say,
off.
Come on, guys. First game was about insider trading. Do you think we're going to do the honest thing here?
That's right. There'll be some really crappy CGI of me flying.
Just have you like on a green screen, because you can do that. You can actually get apps on the iPhone, so you could be lying on top of like a bed or something with your arms stretched out with your glowing light bulb hands.
Excellent.
It just fly off. So there you go. You heard it here first.
Well,
the thank you video.
That's right. New inspiration.
There you go.
All of our poor backers are now going to have to watch this.
I think that'd be absolutely a fantastic thing to happen. Because we are kind of like in the, I guess, if it was a comic, you could say we're in the kind of the last couple of panels of the story before you kind of, before the campaign finishes. I mean, I know you said at the beginning, this is a part-time business for you, and I guess one of the things that people have to understand is that when you're going to be taking this 250 or 200, I'm going to say 268,000. I reckon you'll get 278 or something like that at the end, potentially even 300. But that's all going to go into the games. I think it's a common misconception that somebody that gets a 6-figure Kickstarter campaign is all of a sudden, you know, going like this, dollar bill, dollar bill, kind of like going up to going to Starbucks and going, I'll have the large cappuccino, thank you.
Right, they do that, and then they really quickly collect all the money that they just did that to, and then go and pay everybody else.
Exactly, that's it. I think, you know, it's like life in the role of a games designer. Get your game funded, spend 3 weeks panic stations waiting until you get the email from Kickstarter to say they've actually given you the money, or go around sending emails to people to say, I noticed you dropped your pledge, you kind of thing, having to deal with that, and then getting the money and then instantly writing a check to the manufacturer.
There's a lot of contributors in this project, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's that top line goes to a lot of places.
Exactly.
And, the last place it lands is us, and it's much smaller when it lands there.
Absolutely.
So.
No, I'm aware of that. It's like getting paid on Kickstarter is just like kind of getting paid on payday, because then 3 days later all your bills come out, and then you realise what you've got to live off of. You know, that kind of thing.
Right, yeah, you put it into, you know, and if you take it and extrapolate it over the amount of hours that have gone into the design and, you know, the play testing, and then the making the Kickstarter and managing the Kickstarter, you look at it and you just kind of laugh, because, you know, it's like pennies or small dollars per hour that you make at the end of it. And, you know, yes, there's a potential that the game has a life cycle of several years and is a hit and can well recoup the amounts that you've, you know, kind of put into fixed cost. However, it's a hits business, right? There's the risk that you sell your first print run, or you maybe don't even sell out of your first print run, and that's all there will be. So then you're stuck, right? You do it all over again.
Did you feel pushed to create lots more stretch goals for the game, or had you already planned that? Out? I mean, was there an inkling behind you that thought, this is an IP, it's a well-known IP, where there's an estimation behind what you thought the stretch goals were potentially going to be?
I would say our finish right now is pretty in line with where we actually expected. But that said, like, I think there's something to be said for, like, how you manage up and manage down to what your expectations are as a result of, you know, planning for stretch goals and things like that. And, you know, for us, when we are contemplating our stretch goals, you know, stretch goals are a factor of three things, right? Like, what do your backers want? Mm-hmm. What's feasible, like, from a manufacturing perspective and, like, a design perspective inside of the game? And finally, like, what do we want to make? You know, like, what's timely and appropriate to create as a part of this game versus as part of an expansion, and, like, what's our longer term vision for this product? And those all need to kind of come together to enable different stretch goals. So for this game in particular, you know, we had the ability to potentially include, we'll call it like small expansions or something like that, if this game really went nuts, right? And just kind of bake it into this one. However, you know, in evaluating the feasibility of doing that, you know, it comes with big costs. It comes with, you know, more design time, and some other factors in there that could delay ultimately the delivery of this game. And when we're doing that for a small scale or small successes, it doesn't make as much sense as, like, if this game were doing over 500,000, you know, maybe we'd be in a different place where we'd be talking about, you know, how do we supply those mini expansions to keep people, you know, more content with playing the game while we design some of these more full-blown expansions that we're thinking about doing. Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of different considerations that come there. But, you know, to your point, I think you have to sort of gauge what interest levels you've got and how many email signups have you got. What are people saying about it? You know, how are all the different stars aligning with this project, whether it's reviewers or whether that's other, you know, third-party support that you have. Like, what are the resources at your disposal? How are you going to, you know, tap into them, and ultimately what's going to be your contribution from them?
And do you have your next game kind of lined up? Are the cogs already kind of whirring away between you and Seth about what you're going to be bringing to market next?
Always. So there's, the running joke is that Seth and I are always working on some sort of bad game, and it's true, but that's part of, I think, what happened, part of our creation process. We will destroy really, really bad games, but we'll get rid of them quickly, and from them we'll be inspired by something or some experience that leads to a better game, and then eventually leads to a great game. And I think we already have that next great game design in the wheelhouse, but we're still working on it. If any of your listeners are stateside and they happen to be going to, there's a convention called Unpub. That's usually where a lot of people get to play our terrible ideas, but we'll be playing it there. So to tell you more details about it, besides just a pronoun, this game is inspired by Zolkin, terraforming Mars, and a little bit of a Puerto Rico. In it, the main mechanic in it is this worker placement idea, where you are having to synchronize your workers across a variety of different choices. So think Zolkin, right, where you have these different wheels, and you have to place your workers in different places, and it's all about the timing of when you can, kind of put them on and then keep them on and then take them off, right? And that simple choice is very interesting in that game. And if you were to add that to a more engine building style of a terraforming Mars, then you would arrive close to where our game is. However, we don't want this game to last 3 hours or to destroy everyone's brain. Instead, we want it to be interesting and more approachable, played in 90 minutes or less. And so for that reason, we've simplified it quite a bit and streamlined some of the things within those games. So you'll see more of an action selection type of mechanism here, more akin to a Puerto Rico. So your choices and different engines that you choose to build can take you far and wide, but the core guts of what you're doing are much narrower. And I think that's where it gets interesting. So I don't want to spoil too much more about it because it can still change, but hopefully that makes sense. That's our next game we're working on.
That's big mechanics.
Yeah.
That is big mechanics.
And it's different from any of the other three that we've talked about. So this is more of our first stab at a... I don't even know that I would call it a traditional Euro because of what's in here, but it is more Euro inspired and what people would call more strategy based than perhaps some of our other games have been.
Okay. If people have listened tonight and they've listened to that and they've listened to the stuff you've done with the Reckoners and Stockpile and Crosstalk and everything like that, where can we find you on the interweb nets, sir?
You can find us at NauvooGames.com or follow us on social media at Nauvoo Games. And if you're listening tonight, you still have, or today, or whatever time it is where you are and when you're listening, if you are listening in about the next 24 hours from when this comes out, the Reckoners will still be available on Kickstarter, and you can help support us and unlock some more stretch goals for us. So please check us out. And if you do happen to miss the Reckoners, the Pledge Manager will be open soon, so we hope you'll at least take a look at that. We have more content coming for the game soon, including some more expansions for it that we'll be designing along with this new project.
That's cool. So, where'd you get the name from?
Nauvoo comes from beautiful in Hebrew.
So
it happens to be a combination of Seth and I's backgrounds as well. I'm Jewish and he is Mormon, and in the LDS faith, Nauvoo is basically a religious pilgrimage site in Illinois. and we happened to grow up in Illinois. So
right.
there's kind of this funny set of factors, and we just kind of like the name.
Cool.
Nauvoo Games.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you very, very much for coming on.
Hey, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully I wasn't too boring for you and your guests, but I'm really grateful for for the chance.
It's been good fun. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then please go to your internet browser of choice and search for We're Not Wizards. You can find us on Twitter at We're Not Wizards. You can find us on Facebook at We're Not Wizards. You can find us on Instagram at We're Not Wizards. You can even find us on YouTube, because our lovely podcast host Podbean automatically put all our episodes onto YouTube automatically. I don't know how it works. It's magic. Well, it's not magic because we're not wizards, but there you go. You can catch us on the usual kind of podcast channels, which is things like Stitcher and Spreaker and Podknife and Acast and Player FM and all these wonderful, fantastic places. You can also catch us on Spotify. So if you're fancying listening to us through Alexa and all these other places, then just say, "Oi, Alexa, put on We're Not Wizards," and it should do that, which is quite cool. But you can also catch us through Apple Podcasts as well. And if you have enjoyed what you've listened to tonight, please consider leaving us a subscription, which is very much appreciated. If you like us even more than that, then please consider dropping us a rating or a review. And as we always say, don't give us 10, because it makes us big-headed. And don't give us a 1, because it makes us cry. But give us a 5, because it's in the middle and it's average. And we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average is the rather successful business-headed gentleman that is Brett Sobol. So thank you very, very much for coming on again, Brett.
Thank you, Richard.
Best of luck with the remaining hours of the campaign, and we will make sure that the links and all the social media are put in our show notes so that we have notes to show. There are only 2 more things to do, and the first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Brett?
No,
of course we're not. We're a task force that's about to take down a team of epic people who are threatening to potentially destroy the world. So we're definitely not wizards. And the other thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Brett. Say goodbye, Brett.
Goodbye, guys. Thank you very much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe. Roll 6s. You have got hopefully about 24 hours left by the time this goes out to go out and check out Nauvoo Games, The Reckoners. If you're into any of the book series, it definitely looks like it's worthwhile checking out. But until the next time, goodbye.